Hi there, and welcome to my review of Superman. Out of the gate, I must admit that I'm a big Superman fan, and as my wife probably knows, this was my most anticipated film of the year, as I spent this whole month counting down the days until my butt was back in the theater ready to watch this film. So, how does James Gunn's take on this iconic character play out to start the reboot of the DC Universe? Well, you'll have to stay tuned to find out. As always, spoiler warning throughout. These reviews go over the pros, cons, and main takeaways that I gathered from the film, as well as my overall thoughts and opinions on the movie itself. If you have yet to see the film, please give it a watch and come back to this review once you are all caught up. All right, let's start off by first talking about James Gunn. If you're not familiar with the director of this film, James Gunn is the mind and visionary behind recent TV shows and films, including Peacemaker.
That's where they hold him flat. Nothing like a bloodbath to start the day.
They call me Peacemaker.
I cherish peace with all my heart. I don't care how many men, women, and children I need to kill to get it.
Marvels of the Guardian of the Galaxy trilogy.
I'm giving you to the count of 5. 5! Oh, we're gonna rob the guys who just beat us senseless. Oh, you want to talk about senseless? If they didn't turn you over. And how on earth were they gonna turn us over when you only gave them a count of 5? How? I have a plan. You've got a plan. Yes. I don't even believe you have a plan. I have part of a plan.
What percentage of a plan do you have?
I don't know. 12%. 12%?
And the most recent Suicide Squad film, and now, of course, Superman.
You were out there helping them?
I thought I was.
They've always been wrong about me. I get scared, but that is being human. And that's my greatest strength.
The film meant to reboot the DC universe. Not only that, but James Gunn, similar to Kevin Feige, is in charge of overseeing the production of all upcoming TV shows and films within this new DC universe to compete with the successes of Marvel and its cinematic universe. So, no pressure, James Gunn. But from the looks of it, this film has been well received from the general audiences and critics alike, having received a certified fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes and performing quite well within these past 2 weeks in terms of box office returns. With that being said, let's take a moment to talk about what myself, critics, and other fans of Superman have been enjoying about this film. Pro number 1, David Cornsweet's take as Superman.
Yeah, good. Okay, good. Good work.
How's Superman to work with?
He's fun.
Nice work, everybody. High fives. Cool. I did meet Coleman, so please. Well, you're doing great work today. Oh, it looks like they might be ready. Are you guys ready?
Let's roll, please. Ready and action.
I am so here for this new adaptation of Superman. I enjoyed seeing a Superman on screen surrounded by vibrant colors and having something to say. While it's true, when compared to other iterations of Superman, David's portrayal of Superman may not appear as physically capable or menacing, I'd argue that David's portrayal is appropriate for this story and the universe James Gunn is building upon. David brings a caring and natured Superman that is grounded in his beliefs and ideals of the world and is able to reflect the beacon of hope that we have all come to understand within Superman's core character traits. David's version of Superman is charming, he's funny, vulnerable, and grounded. Gone are the days of doom and gloom Superman with little to nothing to say, and welcomed is a Superman that will not only save a squirrel in the middle of a battle, but will also have the supreme strength to withhold a toppling building. This Superman is one that has only been known to the world as Superman for the past 3 years, and this younger Superman lays the ground for much learning to be done in future installments. Although inexperienced, he has a big heart, and he wants to save as many lives as possible. I'm excited to see where James Gunn and company take the character within future installments, and they've established a solid foundation moving forward. Speaking of that foundation, pro number 2 would have to be the world building. While I enjoyed this iteration of Superman as a character, much can also be praised within the world building that James Gunn lays out for the future films and TV shows to build upon. In this world, metahumans have been around for many years, and people have become used to witnessing heroic acts and, well, as well as evil forces. While Marvel feels like much of an extension of our world, just with heroes, in this world, heroes are firmly established. It's a fantasy from top to bottom, with stakes as realized as the heroes themselves are willing to go. In this world, it makes sense to have Crypto, flying around helping Superman at times, Supergirl, Guy Gardner's horrendous bowl cut, the opening of pocket dimensions, proton rivers, Metamorpho creating a mini sun out of his hands, or other metahumans flying around at any given moment. As much as this is a film about Superman, it's also about relaying his world to a new audience. We get a character, Mr. Terrific, that honestly steals every scene he is in. I wouldn't mind seeing more of this character moving forward. The scenes with Superman as Clark Kent, although few, are impactful, and the chemistry he has with Lois drives the emotional segments of this film. James Gunn clearly set out to create a family, fun Superman, and he delivered in his quest to bring this to a new audience, eagerly waiting to a new and fun interpretation of Superman, spliced with comic book callbacks that comic book readers will notice and, of course, appreciate. Something else that I appreciated, which would be my pro number 3, is Superman's score and soundtrack. As James Gunn often does, he inputs various moments of action between popular songs and musical beats. It's been a staple of his work and one that's translated well within this movie. The musical score taken on by John Murphy and David Fleming fits so perfectly within this film, and whenever Superman's score begins to kick in during the moments of heroic acts, it is fully realized and appreciated. And who knew that I'd even associate punk rockers with Superman, but somehow it works within the Superman film. Okay, so pro number 4. Kal-El's reimagined purpose for Earth. Okay, so now that this next pro may be a bit controversial, but hear me out. I must admit I had mixed feelings about this at first, and originally considered placing it as a con. However, after some reflection within the context of this particular version of Superman, I ultimately came around to James Gunn's vision, and now I see it as a compelling strength of this film.
Superman fans. So first of all, I had to trust myself that I was going to honor the pieces of Superman that we needed to keep the same, and also allow myself to make changes where changes might work and wouldn't go against the integrity of who the character is. And so I think that was simply dealing with some of those things, was simply dealing with allowing ourselves to change part of the story in a way that was interesting for the DCU, but that wasn't something that went against who Superman was. And it has been something that's been played with in the comics before.
In a recorded message left behind by his Kryptonian parents, Kal-El is told that his purpose on Earth is to not serve or protect, but instead to rule. The message outlines a vision of Earth as a new Krypton, one to be repopulated and reshaped through him, essentially presenting Kal-El as a conqueror rather than a savior. This is a stark contrast to the traditional portrayal of Superman, where his purpose is often rooted in hope, inspiration, and unwavering moral clarity. Initially, this reimagining felt jarring. Like many, I've grown up with the idea that Superman is this beacon of hope, someone who uses his gifts to elevate humanity and not dominate it. So to see that premise subverted was unsettling, but the more I thought about it, the more I appreciated the choice, especially as it becomes clear this wasn't done with malicious intent. Rather, it serves to enhance the emotional weight of Superman's journey. This version of the story places greater emphasis on the importance of his human upbringing, on Ma and Pa Kent, and their role in shaping his values and identity. The film makes Kal-El's choice to embrace humanity and reject his biological legacy feel far more powerful. The contrast is made especially poignant in the final scenes as Superman's robots play images and videos from his childhood memories, full of love, growth, and human connection. It's a full circle moment that directly counters the original message from Krypton, showing just how far Clark has come, and why his identity as a protector of Earth means more than any destiny that was handed to him. So yeah, I really thoroughly enjoyed David's performance, the world building, the reimagined soundtrack, and the score connected within this version of Superman. However, there were some areas of the film I didn't particularly enjoy, which bring me to the cons of this film. Con number 1, Lex Luthor's master plan. I went into this film really wanting to appreciate the master plan that Lex Luthor was undoubtedly going to be creating, but Lex Luthor's essentially his plans, his schemes are overly convoluted, involving a war between two countries, a Superman clone, pocket dimensions, hundreds of prisoner monkeys typing hate propaganda towards Superman, Hammer of Baravia, a kaiju, a metamorpho, a being that can create kryptonite, and a recording that pretty much casts the parents of Superman and Superman himself as an outsider, all with the main goal of getting the US's government's approval to ultimately kill Superman. For a man that is supposed to be an intellectual, he often came across as whiny and unable to adapt. We are told from the film that Lex feels in a way like he won't be seen given the rise of metahumans despite his intellect and his corporation. Superman being the most meta that the world has seen comes into his crosshairs, and it's with this closed tunnel vision that his downfall is ultimately established. Another aspect of the film I didn't quite enjoy was the reveal of Ultraman. Luthor's creation of Ultraman, a Superman clone, aka Bizarro, but not really. While I was watching this film, I was really hoping that this character wouldn't be revealed to be just a Superman clone or another David, but what I wanted wasn't presented. So yeah, essentially Ultraman is an inferior Bizarro-like character. For those who don't know Bizarro, he is a Superman villain who comes from Bizarro World, where everything is the inverse of Earth's reality, even his powers to a degree. Bizarro, for instance, isn't usually depicted as being affected by green kryptonite, and while Superman has the ability to blow cold air, as we see at one point in this film, Bizarro breathes fire. And while Superman has heat vision, Bizarro is depicted to have cold vision. Cold vision. In a nutshell, Bizarro is, you can come to think of him as the opposite of Superman. On the flip side, Ultraman, while typically depicted as an evil equivalent to Superman from a parallel Earth, his story encompasses an evil version of the eventual Justice League that terrorized their Earth. So regardless of how you look at it, or regardless of how you look at each character, whether that be Bizarro or Ultraman, the film reveals this version of Ultraman to be an inferior hybrid between these two, skipping out for an uninspiring take on its portrayal of Ultraman. Con number 3 would be the tonal highs and lows. Coming in at just over 2 hours, this film flies by, which is usually a good sign. I generally prefer movies that feel too short rather than those that overstay their welcome. However, in this case, the brisk pacing comes at the expense of emotional depth and character development. Clark Kent, for instance, is barely present in this film. There are only 3 substantial scenes featuring him. One early on where he interacts briefly with Lois, and another one with his parents, and then, of course, the scenes of where he's at the Daily Planet and he's conversing with everyone there. But regardless, the scenes are relatively short and feel more like obligatory check-ins than meaningful explorations of his character. For a film that includes Superman, there's surprisingly little focus on the man behind the cape. His humanity, inner conflict, and relationships are glossed over. I would have really appreciated more time with him and Lois, Jimmy Olsen, or even extended the scene with his parents by a few more minutes. A broader issue is the film's tendency to undercut these emotional or serious moments with humor. Whenever a scene seems poised to carry real emotional weight, whether it's grief, introspection, or moral complexity, it's often interrupted by a quick joke. The exception being, of course, that scene where Lex shoots a guy in front of Metamorpho and Superman. I would have really appreciated the scenes with Lois and Clark, as well as Superman's speech to Lex at the end of the film, to linger a bit more than it did, giving us that emotional, meaningful impact. So we've talked about what the film gets right and what doesn't work for the film. Let's now talk about some of the key takeaways of the film. Key takeaway number 1. The limits and consequence of intervention. In one of the film's most striking sequences, Superman intervenes to prevent 2 fictional nations from escalating into war. While his intention is to preserve peace, the deeper context of political history, cultural trauma, and long-standing grievances is left unresolved. One of the nations previously dependent on Superman's protection now faces the question, what happens when your protector is no longer there? This subplot critiques over-reliance on outside intervention, especially when that intervention comes from a place of assumed moral superiority. It reflects a broader message: true peace cannot be imposed from above and must be built from within. Superman himself comes to recognize this through his interview with Lois, that even with his best intentions, his presence can create unattended imbalances, shifting power dynamics, fostering dependence, and even deepening resentment. The film asks viewers to reflect on the real-world parallels. How often do powerful nations intervene under the banner of justice, only to leave behind chaos, resentment, or a worsened situation? By portraying Superman as a well-meaning figure who must learn to listen rather than simply act, the film critiques the simplistic hero model and geopolitical narrative, underscoring that even the noblest actions must be tempered with humility, understanding, and the awareness that every choice has consequences. Key takeaway number 2. Superman, the immigrant experience.
I think Superman is a man of a person, a hero for the world.
Warner Brothers takes its latest superhero swing with Superman. Its director, James Gunn, calls the movie a story about an immigrant who came from somewhere else and the value of basic human kindness. In his words, the story of America.
I don't think of him as, he is American. He's raised in Kansas. You know, he's a Midwestern kid, just like me.
And now the idea of Superman, remember, literally an alien from another planet, being framed as an immigrant story, is getting a lot of attention and a bit of backlash so far.
Warner Brothers has not had the most success in these DC comic adaptations into movies. they're hoping to sort of break that curse, regardless if there was controversy, regardless of that, just the fact alone that it is a Superman movie, there's a lot of eyes on it and a lot of pressure to get this right.
At its core, the 2025 Superman film reaffirms a central truth about the character. Superman is not just a story about power, it's a story about immigration, identity, and the right to belong. Throughout the film, Superman wrestles with questions of who he is, a child of Krypton or a son of Earth. Raised by the Kents in Kansas, he lives by human values of kindness, humility, and compassion. And yet, his alien origins constantly cast him as an outsider, feared, mistrusted, and weaponized by political forces who see him as other. This culminates in a climatic confrontation with Lex Luthor, who represents this xenophobic fear and ideological purity. Luthor sees Superman not as a man, but as a threat, a meta above all metas, not human, but an alien pretending just to be human. But Superman's response isn't just about defending himself, it's a statement about what it means to be human and showing humanity. Being human isn't about where you're from, it's about what you choose to be, how you care for others, how you protect the vulnerable, and how you live with compassion even when the world gives you every reason not to. And if that's not humanity, then what is Superman's speech near the end of this film reframes Superman not as an alien savior, but as a reflection of the immigrant journey. Someone who arrives in a new world, adopts its values, and gives back more than he takes. It's about assimilation without erasing, about dual identity, and about earning belonging through action. In a time when immigration is heavily politicized, a national identity is under scrutiny, the film delivers a timely reminder: humanity is not defined by blood or origin, but by empathy, courage, and choice. This, of course, brings me to my third key takeaway: defining your own destiny.
This isn't just for Superman.
The film emphasizes that Superman is shaped by the choices he makes, rather than by his origins or the expectations of his biological parents. His Kryptonian parents, their message, revealed later in the film, suggests a path of conquest and dominance. However, it is Superman's adoptive parents, the Kents, who install in him the values of kindness and compassion while reminding him that parents are only here to guide and provide their kids with the tools to make mistakes for themselves, absent of parental control. Ultimately, Superman chooses to embrace his humanity and use his powers to help others, solidifying the idea that individual actions and personal values are more important than lineage. Empathy and kindness in a cynical world, Gunn has stated that his primary message of the film is the value of basic human kindness, especially in a world that can be cynical and negative. The film portrays Superman as a figure of hope and optimism, challenging the trend of dark and edgy superhero stories. His belief in goodness of humanity despite challenges and skepticism highlights the importance of empathy and positive action. So, what does James Gunn's Superman ultimately leave us with? Beyond the action set pieces, the vibrant world building, and David Cornsweet's grounded performance, this film dares to reframe Superman not just as a symbol of strength, but as a reflection of who we are and who we strive to be. This isn't just a reboot of a cinematic universe, it's a reintroduction of Superman's core ideals through a modern, more mature lens. At its heart, Superman is a story about choice. The choice to be kind in the face of cynicism, and the choice to do the right thing even when it's inconvenient, and the choice to define your own path rather than be bound by where you come from. It's about how we treat others and outsiders specifically, how we intervene in conflicts we may not fully understand, and how easily heroism can become harmful when driven by ego or fear. Superman's final speech to Lex Luthor isn't just a defense of his own humanity, it's a challenge to ours. In a time where immigration, interventionism, and ideological division dominate the headlines, this version of Superman reminds us that humanity is a matter of values, not origin. That being human is about compassion, empathy, and the courage to stand for others, not just for ourselves. Yes, this film isn't perfect. It stumbles in some ways, especially with its plot decisions and reinventions, but when it gets right, it really gets right. Because it understands that Superman doesn't just represent strength. He represents hope, restraint, and the belief that a better world is possible. But only if we take responsibility for the consequences of our actions and treat even the most powerful among us with accountability. This Superman may be from another world, but his story is more ours than ever. Thanks so much for watching. If you've seen the film, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What theme stood out most to you? Did this new version of Superman work for you? And what do you think about where the DC Universe is going next with Supergirl and Clayface? If you've enjoyed this review, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Until next time, this is Film Sense with Brian.